What happens when a beloved morning show host decides they've finally had enough of royal excuses and entitlement? The cameras rolled, the lights blazed brightly, and the familiar theme music of Live with Kelly and Mark filled the studio. But what began as just another morning show would soon spiral into one of the most explosive live TV moments in recent memory. Kelly Ripa sat in her usual poised position, her trademark smile lighting up the set. Mark Consuelos, sharp in his navy blue suit, adjusted his tie while exchanging a knowing glance with his wife. Something in the air felt different that morning, charged, electric, as if everyone could sense that something big was about to happen. The guest of honor, Prince Harry, strode onto the stage with his polished public figure smile, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit. But there was a subtle edge in his eyes, a tension that suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable being there. As the audience applauded politely, Harry settled into the guest chair, his posture stiff, arms resting too deliberately on the armrests. "Prince Harry," Kelly began warmly, "thank you so much for joining us this morning. We know you've been incredibly busy with your projects and charitable initiatives. It means a lot that you're here with us today." Harry shifted slightly, his smile fading just enough to be noticeable. "Well," he said, his voice laced with practiced formality, "to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure why I'm here. My publicist insisted this would be good for my image, but frankly, I have more important things to be doing than sitting on an American morning show talking about trivial matters." The words dropped into the studio like a lead weight. The audience went silent. Mark raised his eyebrows, his expression flashing briefly from surprise to caution. Kelly's smile froze. Still professional, but the slight flicker of irritation in her eyes didn't go unnoticed. "I see," Kelly said, her tone still polite but edged with frost. "Well, we certainly appreciate your honesty, and I'm sure our viewers will find that refreshing. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about your recent charitable work, since you mentioned having more important things to do?" Harry leaned back, crossing his arms offensively. "Look, I've been doing charitable work my entire life. I was born into it, raised in it, and I continue because it's expected of me. But let's be honest, what I really want to talk about is how the media, including shows like this one, constantly misrepresent me and my family." Mark felt his instincts kick in. There was a story brewing, one that was veering far away from the friendly chat they had planned. "That's interesting, Harry. Could you give us some examples of how you feel you've been misrepresented? Our viewers would love to hear your perspective." Harry's composure began to crack, his voice rising as his hands gripped the chair's arms tighter. "Where do I even begin? Every single thing I do gets twisted into some negative narrative. If I try to protect my family, I'm called controlling. If I speak out against injustice, I'm labeled as whining. And when I move countries to escape harassment, suddenly I'm accused of abandoning my duties. It's exhausting." Kelly set her mug down with a sharp clink. "Harry," she said, her voice still measured but colder now, "being in the public eye comes with challenges, yes. But you've chosen to give multiple tell-all interviews. You chose to write a book revealing private family conversations. You signed multi-million-dollar deals to share your story. You can't have it both ways." The studio held its breath. The tension was no longer just simmering, it was boiling. Harry's face reddened as he glared at Kelly. "You have no idea what you're talking about. You sit here in your comfortable studio chatting with celebrities and think you understand what it's like to have your entire life dissected. You don't." Mark leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. "Harry, I think what Kelly is saying is that when you share so many personal details publicly, it naturally invites discussion, and sometimes criticism. That's just reality." "Don't patronize me," Harry snapped, his royal composure fully gone. "I didn't come here to be lectured by some morning show hosts about my life choices." The air in the studio grew heavy, as if everyone knew they were watching the start of something unforgettable. Kelly's eyes hardened. Mark straightened in his chair. The confrontation had begun, and neither side was about to back down. The studio felt like it was holding its breath. Even the camera crew, usually unfazed by live drama, had stilled, eyes flicking nervously between the hosts and their royal guest. Mark leaned back slightly, his jaw tightening. He had seen tense moments before, but this was different. Prince Harry wasn't just defensive, he was openly combative. Kelly, however, wasn't going to let the insult slide. A courtesy, Kelly repeated slowly, her tone deceptively calm. You came here as a courtesy. Let me tell you something, Harry. We've had presidents on this show, Academy Award winners, Nobel laureates, heroes who've risked their lives for others, and not one of them has ever spoken to us with the level of disrespect you've shown since the moment you sat down. Harry rolled his eyes dramatically. Oh, please. Don't compare me to your little parade of American celebrities and politicians. I'm a member of the British royal family. I've dedicated my life to service while you've spent yours entertaining housewives and retirees. The audience collectively gasped. Mark's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, deliberate tone. Watch yourself, Harry. You just insulted not only my wife, but every single person who tunes into this show and supports what we do. Harry smirked, his confidence growing nastier by the second. Your wife? Oh, that's rich. The mighty husband defending his territory. How very American of you. I suppose this is the part where you try to look tough in front of the cameras. Mark stood up slowly, his movements calm but charged with unmistakable authority. I don't need to look tough, Harry. I don't need to threaten anyone. But here's what I will say. You can insult me all you want. But the moment you disrespect my wife and the millions of people who watch us every single day, you cross a line you don't get to cross. Harry let out a bitter laugh that rang hollow in the tense silence. How noble of you, the great protector of morning television. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I've met with the world leaders. I've dined with presidents. I've sat across from the most powerful people on the planet. And you think I'm going to be intimidated by some soap opera actor who lucked into a TV career? Kelly rose from her chair, her petite frame somehow commanding the entire space. Enough, she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I've been doing this job for over 2 decades. I've earned every single thing I've achieved through hard work, respect, and dedication. Things you clearly know nothing about. You want to talk about power, Harry? Real power is connecting with people, making them feel valued, and using your platform to lift others up, not to tear everyone down. Harry's face twisted, his tone incredulous. You're lecturing me about power? My family has shaped the course of history for centuries while you gossip with movie stars about their next projects. Mark stepped closer, his voice calm but slicing straight to the heart of the matter. Your bloodline, your heritage, that's all you have, isn't it? Strip that title away and what have you done? What have you accomplished on your own merit? The words struck Harry like a physical blow. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came. His face darkened several shades, his pride visibly cracking under the weight of the question. You dare question my accomplishments? He finally managed, voice trembling. I served in the military. I've raised millions for charity. And you've done all of it, Mark interrupted sharply, because of the very institution you spend so much time complaining about. The audience erupted in murmurs, sensing the fight escalating beyond the point of no return. Kelly's voice, steady and relentless, cut in again. The military welcomed you because of your status. The charities partnered with you because of your title. The causes you champion get attention because of your royal name. So please, Harry, don't stand there pretending you've overcome some great disadvantage when you've lived your entire life wrapped in the ultimate privilege. Harry's hands were shaking now. Whether from fury or something deeper, no one could tell. But for the first time, he looked like a man losing control of the very narrative he came to defend. Harry's breathing had grown heavier, his chest rising and falling with each ragged inhale. The studio audience, normally so lively, was frozen in stunned silence. Camera operators exchanged uneasy glances, and producers behind the glass frantically whispered into their headsets, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the fireworks continue. You don't understand the pressure I live under, Harry spat, his voice cracking with emotion that blurred the line between anger and desperation. The scrutiny, the constant invasion of my privacy, none of you can possibly comprehend what it's like to live under that microscope every single day of your life. Mark tilted his head slightly, his tone suddenly conversational, almost disarmingly calm. You're right, Harry. We can't understand that kind of pressure. But you know what we can understand? We know what it's like to earn what we have. We know what it's like to be grateful for opportunities instead of feeling entitled to them. And we sure as hell know how to treat people with basic respect. Something you've failed to do since you walked into this studio. Harry blinked rapidly, his composure splintering further. Basic respect, he repeated, incredulous. You've been attacking me from the moment I said I had better things to do than sit here playing morning show games. You've questioned my accomplishments, dismissed my service, insulted my character. Kelly stepped closer, her voice quiet but cutting through the air like steel. No, Harry, we've been responding to your behavior. You walked in here with an air of superiority, sat in that chair, and made it clear that we, and by extension, our viewers, were beneath you. Everything that's happened since has been you reaping exactly what you sowed. Harry opened his mouth to protest, but for the first time since the confrontation began, he faltered. The confidence in his eyes wavered. I was just being honest about how I felt about being here, he muttered weakly. I thought Americans appreciated honesty and directness. Mark shook his head slowly, disappointment etched across his face. There's a difference between honesty and disrespect, Harry. You could have told us you were nervous or that you preferred a different kind of interview format, but instead you chose to insult our show, our work, and the millions of people who watch us. That's not honesty, that's arrogance. The word landed like a hammer blow. Arrogance. Harry flinched visibly, his jaw tightening, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrest of his chair. I'm not arrogant, Harry shot back, his voice rising. I am tired, exhausted from pretending that everything I do is wonderful when most of it feels meaningless. Do you know what it's like to cut ribbons and shake hands and smile through endless events that mean absolutely nothing while the world burns around you? Kelly's expression softened, slightly, but her tone remained firm. Actually, Harry, yes. We do know what it's like. We spend our days talking to people about their projects, their dreams, their struggles, sometimes about things that might seem small to someone like you. But we find meaning in it because we understand that connection matters, that listening matters, that people matter. Harry stared at her, his lips trembling as if he wanted to respond but couldn't find the words. You've convinced yourself that because you were born into privilege, your suffering is somehow greater, your burden heavier, Kelly continued, her voice unwavering. But the truth is, privilege and pain can exist together. What you don't get to do is use your pain as a free pass to treat others like they're beneath you. Mark took a single deliberate step forward, locking eyes with Harry. Nobody is saying you can't have feelings, but your feelings don't excuse your behavior. They don't justify walking into our workplace and insulting us, our audience, and the values we stand for. The studio had gone utterly silent now. Even the faint hum of the lights seemed louder than usual. Harry's eyes darted around, scanning the room, cameras pointed at him, crew members watching with disbelief, and an audience that had stopped clapping long ago. For a fleeting second, something almost like shame flickered across his face. But then, as quickly as it came, it was crushed by wounded pride. Fine, Harry said, his voice cold and brittle. You want the truth? This whole thing is beneath me. Your little morning show, your vapid questions, it's a joke. The fact that millions of people tune in for this, while the world faces real problems, is exactly what's wrong with society today. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud, and for the first time, Kelly and Mark exchanged a look that said everything. This ends now. Kelly turned back toward Harry, her eyes locked on him with a calm intensity that instantly silenced even the faintest rustle in the audience. You know what, Harry? She said softly, but with unmistakable conviction. You're absolutely right about one thing. This show is beneath you. Our questions are far too simple for someone as enlightened as you. Our viewers must be far too common to understand your complexity. And this studio, clearly too small to contain your enormous sense of self-importance. Mark stepped up beside her, presenting a united front that felt unshakable. Which is why, he said firmly, we think it would be best if you left. Right now, we are not going to sit here and continue to be insulted by someone who clearly doesn't want to be here, and who has made it abundantly clear that he has no respect for us, our work, or our viewers. Harry's mouth fell open, eyes widening as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. "You're kicking me off your show?" His voice carried a mixture of disbelief and outrage. "Do you have any idea what kind of backlash this could cause? Do you even understand who I am?" Kelly didn't flinch. Her voice was steady, her composure unshaken. "We understand exactly who you are. You're someone who walked into the studio dripping with arrogance, spent 30 minutes belittling us, our audience, and this entire platform, and somehow thinks that your title entitles you to treat people however you please." She tilted her head slightly, her next words slicing through the tension like a blade. "Well, Harry, here are your consequences. You are no longer welcome on this show." Mark's arm extended toward the exit, his gesture deliberate and final. "Our security team will escort you out. We'll be editing this segment before it airs, and our viewers will know exactly why this interview didn't continue, because your behavior was unacceptable. We don't tolerate that kind of disrespect here." For a moment, Harry just stood there, stunned. The practiced royal confidence that had carried him through countless public appearances seemed to drain from him, replaced by a raw, almost desperate energy. This is a mistake," he said finally, his voice cold, trembling slightly at the edges. "You have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea who you're dealing with. This won't end well for either of you." Kelly took a single step forward, her expression unwavering. "Actually, Harry," she replied, her tone almost gentle but layered with steel, "we know exactly what we're doing, and we know exactly the type of person we're dealing with. The only thing that won't end well is allowing this kind of behavior to go unchecked. So, we're done." She turned to the producers. "Security, please escort Prince Harry out of the building." As two security staff stepped forward, Harry straightened his jacket and lifted his chin, trying desperately to salvage some shred of dignity. "You will regret this," he said, his voice sharper now, but hollow, devoid of real power. Mark's reply was calm, steady, and devastatingly final. "The only thing we regret, Harry, is that we wasted 30 minutes of our viewers' time on someone who clearly wasn't worth it." The words seemed to echo through the silent studio as Harry, still stiff with pride, allowed himself to be escorted toward the exit. Each step he took toward the door felt heavier, the sound of his polished shoes against the studio floor punctuating the tension in the room. Finally, the door closed behind him with a resounding click. The confrontation was over, but the shockwaves were only just beginning. The studio remained silent for several seconds after the door closed behind Harry. The air felt heavy, charged with the kind of energy that follows a confrontation no one will ever forget. Crew members stood frozen, their eyes wide. The audience, still stunned, didn't know whether to clap or stay quiet. Kelly took a deep breath, straightening her white blazer as she turned back toward the cameras. And just like that, her signature warm smile returned, poised, professional, and completely unshaken. "Well," she said, her voice bright but steady, "that certainly wasn't how we expected this morning to go." She glanced at Mark, whose jaw was still set with lingering tension. "But you know what? Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable." Mark exhaled, slowly sinking back into his chair. "That's exactly right," he agreed, his voice calm but firm. "And we want all of you watching to know we have the utmost respect for our guests, our viewers, and this show. But when someone comes into our space and disrespects everything we stand for, we're not going to let that slide. Not today, not ever." Kelly leaned forward slightly, her tone softening just enough to reach every viewer at home. "We hope you understand why we had to take the action we did. This show has always been about respect, kindness, and genuine connection with the people who matter most, our incredible audience, and that will never change." Mark placed a reassuring hand on the table, nodding at the cameras. "We'll keep doing what we do best, celebrating amazing stories, uplifting our guests, and making sure that everyone who sits in that chair knows they're valued and respected. But respect goes both ways. And today, well, today was proof of what happens when someone forgets that." A faint ripple of applause began from the audience, hesitant at first, but quickly growing stronger. It wasn't just applause for Kelly and Mark. It was for the moment itself, for the stand they had taken. Kelly smiled, her eyes glistening just slightly, not with sadness, but with the quiet resolve of someone who had stood their ground and would do it again in a heartbeat. "Thank you," she said warmly to the audience. "Thank you for trusting us, for supporting us, and for being the reason we do this every single day." Mark added, "And to our guest, Prince Harry, if you ever decide to come back and have a real conversation, one built on mutual respect, you know where to find us. But until then," he glanced briefly toward the closed studio door, then back at the camera, "we'll keep moving forward." The audience erupted in applause, this time loud and supportive. The tension that had suffocated the room moments earlier began to lift. Kelly and Mark exchanged a final glance, one that carried both relief and pride. Kelly faced the camera with her trademark grin. "We've got a great show ahead for you today, so let's keep the energy going. Stay with us, because after the break, we're talking with an incredible young woman who turned a simple idea into a movement that's changing lives around the world." As the cameras slowly panned out and the theme music swelled, one thing was certain. Viewers at home would never forget what they had just witnessed. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. It was a live television reckoning, one where entitlement was finally called out, and respect proved that it would always have the final word.